Hello and welcome to this episode of Backyard Fitness and Stuff. I'm your host Wyatt, WN, YouTube rapper, YouTube actor, cosplay nerd, overall enthusiast, a lot of things. Hello. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Welcome to my variety channel. So, we're going to keep the ink tank train rolling with another one which was requested, which is understanding fusions and how to make them. Ben 10, My Hero Academia, DBZ, and more. Fusions is one of my favorite things that Ryan does. Sometimes because, you know, we're close. He may show me some of the fusions and whatnot, and I gotta tell you, I get thoroughly excited seeing genre crossovers and whatnot. But now, to get a little bit more in-depth, like it says in the title, get a little bit more of an understanding for maybe how he creates the fusions and whatnot. Before we get started, I am an artist and I do make music, and I'm working on a project, and I did just drop a song called 90s Static, which if a couple of you guys would check that out, that would be amazing, and I would be eternally grateful. So without further ado, let's get into this reaction. Make sure we're on the beginning. And 3, 2, 1, boom.
Good evening, Internet World and Universe.
Good evening.
This is Or Ash, and today, prepare to enter
What up, buddy?
the Fusion Lab.
Maybe we'll turn that down just a tad for me. There we go. Ooh. That eye reminds me of PS2 games. With the thing.
Fusion has been a staple gimmick in many franchises over the years. As recently as Steven Universe to as old as Dragon Ball Z, Fusion has been a fun and creative way to explore design, power stacking, and character development. More notably, outside of established franchises, it seems to be a very popular concept with fan artists. Ranging from all different franchises, you can find hundreds of thousands of amazing Fusion pieces.
Ooh, sick.
Because, come on, when you first saw Stink Arms or Skulk Tech, you have to admit, it was at least a little bit interesting. I myself fell in love with the idea of fusion all the way back in elementary school when seeing Venustoise in Pokemon for the first time. The main thing I loved about that series were the creature designs, and Venustoise stepped that up to a level I'd never even thought of. Taking elements of two pretty different designs and making a somewhat cohesive creature blew my mind. Since then, I've noticed the concept of fusion pop up in many different forms of media over the years, and the hype from watching all of those examples are actually what led me to start my drawing series, Fusion Lab.
Hell yeah.
Konbanwa, Internet o Sekaiuchu. Boku no namu ne Ash desu. Yokoso, Fusion Lab Hanjojo. And it's been going for over 3 years now. Through doing the series, I've tried dozens of different ways of fusing characters. And through the trial and error designs and analyzing other people's work, I feel as though I've finally found a pattern in all of them. Despite the countless artists and amazing pieces that they created, I believe when designing fusions, there are 4 set styles that they all fall into. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And thanks to the assistance of some amazing artists from our community, we'll even be showing some examples of the process firsthand. So, put on your goggles and your elbow-high gloves, because this is Fusion Lab.
All right. I'm ready.
The different styles of fusion. The examples we're going to be using for each of the styles are going to mainly be Ben 10 related, because 95% of our fan base is the Ben 10 community, so
that's your thing
with that. But we do have some variety in there for the other 5%. Also, for the examples provided by our guest artist, I'll be reading out blurbs they wrote discussing their processes and thoughts when working on the design.
Very cool.
The first style of fusion I call reskinning. This mainly refers to fusions where one of the component character's designs are predominantly texture or material based. Essentially, you take the recognizable material and shape it to fit the other character. Characters like Heat Blast, Upgrade, and Alien X are the most common in the community to be done in this style. One of the well-known, yet much less adored, official fusions from Ben 10 to use this style is Humungoopsaur.
That's just a big goop.
It doesn't make any sense.
How is he strong?
What's the point? Hey, calm down. I know, chill out. Many people, including myself at times, do not prefer this style due to it feeling less like a fusion and more like one character dressed up or shape-changing into another.
Fair
but
enough.
Still,
Not enough
was
was
done.
done.
Simple style of fusion that can render out some pretty interesting designs. And we have 2 great ones from the community artists L Mike and Cyan. First up is L Mike's Ectoneurite Brahmaran fusion, Ghost Frieza. To quote Mike, I first started with a slender and scrawny figure with a similar pose to Frieza's most iconic one. After that, I just had to add the Ghost Freak details to the design. For the face, I used the empty eye socket of the scare as well as the mouth and twisted Frieza's lines underneath the cheeks. I added some wrinkles to the joints and around the purple plates to make it feel like they're actually coming out of Ghost Freak's black cracks. For the feet and toes, it was kind of hard to do because I wasn't sure whether or not to draw them, but in the end I decided to make them similar to the end of Ghost Freak's tail. For the Omnitrix, I like to use the broken symbol that appeared in the episode Dr. Animo and the Mutant Ray to make a distinctive version of the Omnitrix when it's in fusion mode. I also added some spikes on the thighs and elbows and made the ribs very visible. I really like the sharp fingers of Descair, so I used those instead of Ghost Freak's wavy fingers, but they are still under the white skin.
I like the idea of bringing in other artists'
some cracks
stuff
on the purple plates to make them look
and
like
their thought
old.
process.
I
That's
chose
super
Frieza
cool.
because he's my favorite alien design from Dragon Ball Z, and Ghost Freak because I think they're very alike. Both species have a sinister vibe, plus their color palettes being white with purple details made them pretty easy to fuse. I think he'd be a pretty powerful fusion. So once again, let us present L. Mike's Ghost Frieza.
Frieza. Nice. Ooh.
Now, looking over to Cyan's Pyronite Kirishima from My Hero Academia fusion, Crimson Comet. To quote Cyan, I had the concept for this fusion as clear as day when I started drawing it. A mix of Kirishima's hardening quirk with Heat Blast rocky material plus fire. The anime style is a bit hard for me, but as I kept drawing and making changes, I got it down, mixing it with my style to add a little extra flair. To show that this is still Kirishima, I kept the lower half of the torso with the tone closer to his skin tone and made the hardening not as prevalent, as if he'd only transformed the upper part of his body. I also took some inspiration from Red Riot Unbreakable for a more beast-like appearance. After coloring, I tried out the fire effects to see how they looked, tweaked them a little bit, and kept shading and cleaning up the illustration. I went back to the effects and tweaked them a bit, added some glow on the body to increase the flame factor. In the end, I changed some of the lighting and did the last check for cleanup. Once again, may we present Cyan's Crimson Comet.
The rips in the cloth really do it for me. And the glow, of course.
Franken style. The second style I call Franken fusions. This refers to fusions that contain fully intact elements of each component character kind of stuck together. Sort of like a Frankenstein's monster. This style puts freaky before function and is usually structured in a way that ignores convenience for the fusion itself. The best examples we have of this style come specifically from the original series episodes Framed and Dr. Animo and the Mutant Ray. Framed is where we first see Kevin's amalgam form consisting of all 10 aliens at the time. Looking at him, you can clearly see the very different distinctive elements of each alien sort of just popped onto one body. As if Kevin was Sid from Toy Story, but messed with his own self? Is this joke reference working? I don't think so. Though this version of Kevin looks really cool, and this got me super hyped as a kid, he does struggle to balance this form for quite some time. Other examples include the big BO boy, Stink Arms. You have the large body of a Tetraman with the weak wings and eye stalks of a Lepidopteran, resulting in a mass that's just too heavy to fly and too weak to lift a mutant frog. And of course, the fatal fish fry himself, Heat Jaws, a Pisces Valon with the extremities of a Pyronite. This fusion is still physically weak because the hot parts of his body dry out the fish parts. Though this style of fusion can look super cool and result in some very marketable collective toys, Bandai, bring back the fusion chamber, please. They can be very hindering on the fusion itself. Now, we didn't draw any examples for this style purely because there are so many examples from the original Ben 10 series. We're moving on to the next one.
Okie dokie. Fair enough.
Style. Next, we have the hybrid style. This essentially is a much more cohesive and detail-focused form of fusion, blending the elements of each component character in a much more functional and natural-looking way. Simple example would be if you had one character wearing a t-shirt and another a hoodie, you can give that fusion a short-sleeved hoodie. Or if one used a bat and the other used a knife, give him a sword. Looking to Danny Phantom,
my brain said
have
knife
Skulk,
bat.
a future fusion between Skulker and Technus that is a great example of a hybrid. The overall body set is definitely Skulker, but is balanced out with the ghost tail similar to Technus's original form, and the head of flames I feel as though is actually supposed to be a callback both to Skulker's mohawk and Technus's crazy spiked hair, which combining the two in turn just kind of engulfs the entire head in flames, and I find that very funny. Not to mention the base body and gadgets of this fusion don't just feel like Technus's patterns slapped on Skulker's body. ignoring the chest face, but that it actually has tech from both characters working symbiotically. Symbionic Titan. Why didn't I use that as an example in this video? Literally the whole point of that show is that... Ah, damn it. Our two examples for this style come from, again, Cyan, and from a Twitter artist that I follow and love the work of, Floofhips. First up is the godly mix by Cyan of Celestial Sapien and Arceus from Pokemon, called Zetherial. To quote Cyan, I had the idea of using Arceus and Alien X for a while, since they're both gods in their respective canons. It would be pretty epic to see a mix of the most powerful characters in some of my favorite franchises. I didn't have a clear image of what I wanted to go for from the beginning, but as I kept working, some ideas started to flow. I tend to go straight from sketch to coloring, but for these fusions I wanted to keep them very clean. Specifically this fusion. I changed some parts around and took out some parts to not saturate the design, keeping it simple and sleek. After I'm done adding the base colors, I add a multiply layer with a color that I want to shade. After shading, I merge the layers and continue detailing and cleaning up some of the messy
Seeing the different
parts,
styles
adding some
for
darker
the arts
tones
is
and
also very
smudging
cool.
some parts to give it more balance. After that, I add all the cool effects, which is the most fun part. I added the rings of light and the circle Alien X used when he debuted manipulating time. I added light to the galaxy parts of the design as if cosmic energy were coming out of it. As a finishing touch, I threw some small particles of energy and then tweaked some minor things. Once again, let us present Cyan's Zetherial.
I just love watching them become more and more crisp. You know what I mean? It's just very satisfying.
And now, this chilling Necrophrygian Arborian Pelorota fusion drawn by Floofhips, dubbed Roly Polar.
Oh, Roly Polar. Great name.
To quote Floofhips, I really enjoy thinking up unconventional fusions, and I had an idea to combine Cannonbolt and Big Chill for a while now, so I took this as an opportunity to experiment a bit. Using Big Chill's insect-like design combined with the powers of Cannonbolt, I thought up a concept of a roly-poly type. Other than that, I didn't have any design elements set in stone other than the basic shape. As you can see throughout the process, I start out with some very rough lines just to get what I want out of the drawing down on the canvas, before even attempting to get the details and polish down. Plus, I thought it would be fun to explore removing some aspects of the individual aliens' power sets. So I took Big Chill's wings in exchange for the carapace brought on by Cannonbolt. In addition to that, I thought adding some elements wouldn't hurt either. The whiskers or antennas were added on afterwards, but I think they fit the design quite nicely. For the colors, I went with the neutral gray to mimic the colors of the actual roly-poly insect. It worked out because Big Chill's blue with Cannonbolt's off-white makes a somewhat similar color, so this fusion doesn't look too jarring. Overall, the design came out pretty nice, I think, and I hope you guys like it too. Once again, let us present Floofhips' Roly Polar.
Roly Polar. Nice. Good job, Floofs.
Foster style.
Foster style.
The fourth and final style is Foster fusion.
Okay.
A Foster fusion refers to not only a physical but thematic blend between the component characters that creates something that feels completely separate from its parts, almost like a completely new character. The best example of this actually comes from Steven Universe. The fusions in that series are meant to be their own conscious characters having their own personalities and memories. The specific fusion I'm bringing up though is Garnet. For the first 50 or so episodes of the show, Garnet was presented as just another character, and it legitimately shocked me when it was revealed that she was a fusion. Her design was just so solid, I hadn't even considered it, even with the hints that they dropped throughout the show. Once Ruby and Sapphire were revealed, looking at their individual designs, you can see the inspiration for some of Garnet's elements. But Garnet still stands out from the
individually
two pretty well. And since we're already talking Steven Universe fusions, how about, for an example, we use a Spinel Peridot fusion I call Watermelon Quartz. When designing Foster-style fusions, you want elements of both components to be present in a subtle way. Using the Steven Universe design rules, I started with the type of personality this character would have.
Okay.
Spinel is very animated and over the top, whereas Peridot is very compassionate about the things she likes and very intelligent. I'm imagining this fusion would be a very quick-paced, fun-loving, but maybe competitive type of person. Then, looking at their gimmicks, Spinel being very cartoony and Perry being very tech-based and also works with the personality, my conclusion is kind of an arcade-style fighter. Think like Diva from Overwatch, but with like Street Fighter levels of energy. Combining the outfits while keeping
Big fan of fighter
gimmick,
games.
I gave her fingerless gloves.
Cosplayed
and
as
turned her
several
jumpsuit
different
into a
Street
sort
Fighter
of
characters.
sleeveless gi. Color-wise, I actually struggled for quite a bit. Typically in Steven Universe fusions, you just mix the two colors together, and most of the time they're complementary. But mixing together pink and green make like a brownish gray, which I don't really think works for the vibrant personality that I plan on giving her.
That makes sense.
So after thinking for a bit, I thought, why not watermelon colors? They're a great balance of greens and pinks and makes naming her super easy. So once again, may I proudly present Watermelon Quartz. This by far is my favorite style of fusion, and still works really well outside of Steven Universe standards. For example, this Orishan Viscosian fusion I call Hydrant. This guy admittedly is a reinterpretation of a fusion I did previously that I never really enjoyed from way back in the beginning of my series. Looking back at the original, it's very obvious my inexperience at the time kind of hindered how interesting this could have been. So I chose this one to see another way that it could have turned out. Because with fusions, there really can be
how artists
endless
are, man.
iterations and versions.
Always
the original,
growing,
I
always
designed in
getting
a sense
better.
of a reskin style, which honestly I try to avoid
That's
that
with
now.
anything.
The way I see this guy is that his base body is a small armored crustacean with hydrogeneration and
We love
kinesis.
growth.
Instead of having it be goop with armor like before, I wanted the liquid to be produced and dispersed from the main body itself, kind of like a dispenser. I gave him a detachable eye stalk that he could support high up on water constructs he creates, and even made a little docking cavity for it in the style of Goop's anti-gravity disc down in the main base of the body. I wanted to keep the big stretchy limb look to him to contrast the stockiness of his actual body, and instead of rolling with the generic Goop green, I wanted to
Working
try a couple
underneath
different
and like
colors to
messing
make
with the
character
goop
more
translucency
cohesive
like
looking
on the
and more
top,
unique.
very neat.
But after trying a few different things, I ended up just making it water to simplify the design. Plus, I think the blue works well with the maroon. Once again, may I proudly present Hydrant.
Nice. Love Hydrant.
Now that we've fully discussed all the types of fusion, I wanted to do a little experiment.
All right.
Without telling them any of the design analysis discussed, I gave Cyan, L-Mike, and Floofhips all the same components to fuse. I want to compare their thought processes and their final designs to see how different they can be from each other, and figure out what style they are. And I'm doing one too, because this is my lab
Of course.
and my video, and I want to. Rob, roll the transition. The components that we're all going to be working with are the 5 years later Powerhouse playlist aliens, Buck Wild, Portaler, and Sornitho. That's right, a 3-part fusion. Let's see how they handled it. Starting with L. Mike. To quote Mike, for this fusion, I forgot to record the sketch of it, so sorry about that. My thought process was very simple. The head is going to be a combo of the 3, the chest and hands are going to be from Portaler, the wings and lower arms from Sornitho, and the legs, tails, and arms are from Buckwild, as well as the main suit. Introducing Rift Ripper.
Oh my goodness.
Looking at Mike's process and reasoning, it seems pretty obvious that he went for a Franken style, and he definitely hit the nail on the head with this one. Though each part does flow very seamlessly into each other, you still see pretty intact elements from each individual alien, which is one of the main signs of a Franken fusion. Franken
I like the
fusions
little
are
black
the most
hole type
common
things.
style to be used in the original continuity, and this feels straight out of the Omniverse. I could see this going toe-to-toe against any Kevin amalgam. Seriously, a great job, Mike.
my
Now,
bad.
on to Cyan. To quote Cyan, all 3 aliens are
All I
very
wanted to do
unique
was
and
give a-
different from each other, which made this very fun, but also quite the challenge. I had to constantly change parts of it and move things around because I was trying to find a balance between all the aliens. I definitely had to include the multiple arms for making portals and spells at the same time for extra epicness. I also wanted it to have the extra mobility that Buck Wild has. The portaler aspect of this fusion was something that came to me quite fast. Since he's quite the thick alien, I had to find a way to add it without making it look out of place. So a chest plate is what I went with. Midway through the illustration, I had the idea to connect the ears, wings, and tail together, making it some sort of natural hang glider.
Oh,
It looked a little weird, but that's expected when fusing some of the craziest, unique aliens that 5 years later has to offer. For the palette, I wanted to keep it consistent. A mix of Buck Wild and Portaler for the fur, and a mix of Sornitho and Buck Wild for the wings. For the armored parts of the body, I went with a dark color like Sornitho's horns, with the character characteristic mana color for the energy, since Portaler's abilities would probably be enhanced by Sornitho's magic capabilities. The shading was pretty much the same as the other fusions, so there's not much to mention about that aspect. After cleaning up most of the illustration, I jumped to the effects. Introducing Hair Strike. Okay, firstly, this guy turned out amazing. Through his explanation about balancing the body out and thought into the mobility, it's very clear he used the hybrid style. Taking into account how the creature would move, color palette, and even its thickness, Cyan put a lot of thought into this guy. As per the hybrid style, he combined more of the elements themselves than just the characters. Thank you so much, Cyan, for this amazing Angel Bunny. But now, we move on to Floof Hips. To quote Floof Hips, this fusion was a bit harder than usual since it's a three-way design, so I had to make some sacrifices, as you will soon see. I looked at the three aliens and noticed the similarities between them led to a somewhat insectoid design, which I leaned into. I took advantage of Portaler's shell, Sornitho's 3 sets of limbs, and Buckwild's nimble aerodynamic design to finally come up with a beetle-like alien. The coloring part is my favorite. I started with the carapace and went around to each part finding a fitting color. The bluish greens were mostly from Buckwild, while the rest of the palette was straight from Portaler. Introducing Beelzebug. Right out the gate, we can tell Floof Hips went straight for a Foster fusion. They were given a rabbit, a bird, and a turtle, and they said beetle. Taking the more general details of flying, multi-limbed, and aerodynamic, a beetle fits the theme so well. Note that the wings they made are nothing like Sornitho's, and he was the only alien given that can fly. This design feels so unique and original, but you can still definitely see the inspirations. A badass bouncing beetle boy. Thank you so much,
bouncing beetle boy.
And now finally, onto my interpretation.
Yay!
For mine, I definitely wanted to go with a Foster style, because to reiterate, it's my favorite style. So, similar to Floof Hips, I tried to think of a creature that would have the same combined general traits. At first, I was thinking a dragon to kind of 180 away from the fur and feather elements and lean into Portaler's texture to make it feel more unique, but ultimately after a few sketches, I gave up on that, because I thought it would give off the feel that this fusion included Salamander, which it doesn't. After a lot more sketching, trying not to make a bird, I thought about doing a bat. Sectional body, fur and flight capable. I liked the idea, but I didn't want to just draw a bat. I felt like it'd be boring. I wanted it to feel unique, so I pulled back in some dragon elements, but made it more like a Shenron style dragon with a long slender body and spaced out limbs. Now that I had the base, I just kept tweaking combined elements, multi-limbed and matching body armor to make it feel more uniform,
dragon bat,
more of a skin texture on the wings to lean into the bat dragon feel, and its like main power source generator I actually put on the end of its tail, purely because I thought it would make a cool looking pose.
Of course.
Colors were a struggle once again because I really wanted colors from each alien, but a uniformity to it, and I couldn't figure out how to balance the red shell with the yellow and the blues and greens, so I ended up nixing the red and just stuck with the turquoise yellow color scheme. And with that, I have my interpretation I dubbed Battalion.
Applause. Battalion. Love it.
Hundreds of designs, 3 years of overanalyzing, and even longer of fanboying, I feel as though I finally come up with a solid style guide to designing fusions. I hope this video helped people be able to appreciate fusion art just as much as I do, and make it easier for them to design their own fusions. And maybe that new appreciation possibly persuades you to checking out my Fusion Lab streams over on the Rust Bucket channel.
Rust Bucket.
Every Thursday from 8 p.m. to midnight. There's a link in the description. Please check it out. Thank you. I want to give a humongous thanks to Cyan, Elmike, and Floof Hips for taking the time out of their day to make some amazing art for this video. This is not a please check them out. This is a demand. Go to the links in the description below and follow them. These are the artists you're looking for. Whatever else they gave us. Is DeviantArt still alive? If you guys have any questions or want more in-depth discussion on design stuff like this, make sure to like this video and let us know in the comments. And if you'd like to support us, you can join our Patreon, where you can get weekly updates on all of our other projects like 5 years later and beyond. Or consider joining our Discord, or checking out our
all
website.
the things.
Really, any of the links in the description help us out. Other than that, thank you guys so much for visiting the Fusion Lab. I am ORAsh, and I'm surviving.
Trying, bro. Peace. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed that. I feel like having understanding in the title made a whole lot of sense, because I actually feel like I understand the process of different types of fusions better than I did previously. and I think all of the different artists working on the same project at the end, and then all using different strategies and seeing their different approaches really made for a very interesting video. I am very happy with the suggestion for the video. This was probably I couldn't have picked a better one myself. Did you like that or this or any of this? Leave a like. If you dislike that or this or any of this, leave a dislike. And yeah, guys. Yeah, guys. Until next time, backyard fitness and stuff. Woo!
Now I'm sitting in my room staring at the static 90 static.